Lately, I've been real busy when it comes to organization. Can you tell that this is a super good job? But honestly, I've actually been busy with sorting out different iOS devices that are in different spots, trying to find a better solution of how to store them, iPods included, but I've also been real focused on the digital side of things. This right here is a pretty accurate representation of how my Mac Mini desktop used to look like. We have a nice clean background, and then we have this. So as you can see from the names here, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's basically just a direct copy of various different flash drives, SD cards, essentially files that just haven't been stored elsewhere. And the reason I did this is because I don't have a lot of these flash drives, but these are basically essential for USB installers because, well, it's a USB flash drive. So I wanted to clean them up, get them ready for Windows and macOS installers, but the result is that I had to deal with this for a long time. Now, I could have just dealt with this earlier, like actually organize everything at the same time, but I figured I would just leave it for another time, and, well, another time grew into I don't know how long, and it's been like that forever. But things have changed because now I can actually take these and just toss them right there. Now, those were just empty files to show you guys how it looks like, but if we go to my Mac Mini, now this is honestly fantastic. It's a clean desktop. I can't remember the last time it actually looks like this. Now, to be fair, my second desktop is still kind of a mess, but the mess is exclusive to just YouTube videos, so basically just the actual footage here, which is all that I really care about. Because I use the Mac Mini as my editing machine, it works really well for that, and now it's even better with a clean desktop. Because I have several systems, I like to prioritize the main use case, and in this case, it's a Final Cut Pro machine, and it also works to archive and backup all my videos. Now, I could have organized this way before I got any of these other systems, but it was worth waiting because as this is a Mac Pro, we have a lot of storage to work with. And the way that I use the Mac Pro primarily focuses on iTunes and old iOS devices. Some of the files were old iOS related, such as, old apps, which honestly I'm not even sure work properly. But the point is that everything has been sorted to the proper system that actually deals with this type of stuff. And in the future, I can actually go through all the files. So I guess technically the organization isn't complete, but it is significantly better than what it used to be. And like I said, we actually have a clean desktop now. Now, it probably doesn't seem super relevant considering we're going to talk about this iPod here, but this iPod is actually part of the file nonsense that hasn't been dealt with in forever. Now, I know this probably seems pretty crazy, but I actually had this iPod before any Macintosh system. This is my iPod 4th generation. It has a monochrome screen, so this was before the photo and video models. As you can see, it's not exactly a mint condition example. The entire time I've had it, the battery has always held a charge, and the hard drive makes wonderful hard drive noises. On the back, you can see that it is indeed an iPod, but it's also an HP model. Gotta love the old HP logo on the iPod itself. This one also has a 20GB hard drive. I even have several FireWire chargers for the iPod itself, which is really awesome because FireWire is awesome. And I even have several accessories, including this dock for the iPod. So despite having a fully operational iPod here alongside all of these awesome accessories, I have not used this iPod in forever. And to show you what I mean exactly by that, well, we just have to go into the settings here and take a look at a very important detail. Underneath the model number here, you can see what version of iTunes this works with. So whether it be Mac or PC. And if we actually take a look at it, it's formatted for Windows. The last time I synced up this iPod was with a Windows iTunes library that doesn't exist anymore. So just like with all of the digital mess on the macOS side of things, we're finally going to take a closer look at the iPod itself and format it for Macintosh. Now, I'm not losing anything because all of the content on here has been transferred over to my main iTunes library. So we're just gaining functionality because I can actually sync to the iPod again. So I've had these FireWire to 30-pin cables for a long time, but the only real thing I actually used it back when I used the iPod was with the charger itself. Now don't get me wrong, these chargers are fantastic because it's FireWire, but considering we have a Mac Pro with built-in FireWire, we can actually sync an iPod, just like it's the 2000s again, using good old FireWire. Now, if I had an iPod like this, or an iPod Video that was obviously broken in some way, then yeah, it would actually be awesome to upgrade it, whether it be a different housing, or, you know, more storage, better battery life. But considering I also use iOS devices a lot, some of which have a lot of storage available, having all of the music available on hand isn't super, like, essential for me. So it's more fun to actually just travel back in time with this, and the battery itself still works surprisingly well. Now this is awesome. It's always cool to use FireWire on the Mac here. And now we can use it with 30-pin. Now as for the dock itself, this is just the standard line output dock. As cool as it would be to actually have the multimedia functions such as S-video output, this is after all a standard monochrome iPod, so all that we really need are the 30-pin connector and line output. And believe it or not, 30-pin is actually pretty old. This is from 2003. Well, this was unexpected. Now, I looked into this to see if I could actually restore it directly with the Mac Pro, and while I can, I basically just have to get the software separately, kind of like an IPSW file for an iOS device. Interestingly enough, Apple still has this ancient iPod updater software, but even on macOS Lion, or even Leopard for that case, it's pretty out of date because the minimum system requirements are 10.3.9 and iTunes 6. However, if I try to run this on macOS Lion, it says that I already have it installed despite, you know, not being able to restore it. So the easiest thing to do is to just connect this up to a modern Mac and communicate directly with the servers that way because, you know, it actually still works. But before I do that, I also wanted to try out this iPod CD that I have. This used to come with iPods in the box, and this has iTunes and the iPod software. This, however, doesn't help us out because this is for iPod software 2, which this doesn't support because this initially launched with iPod software 3. It also has iTunes 4, so maybe if we were using macOS 10.3, it would be fine. Another interesting thing to see is that even on iTunes 10 here, which can't communicate with the servers right now, does actually detect that there is a version available, but if I try to download it, it immediately says that it can't connect. Now, it would be really awesome to have all of the iPod software and even IPSW files on the Mac Pro directly, because that's what I'm trying to use this thing for. But considering I still have a lot of other files that need to be sorted out, I'm going to wait until then because, well, they also take up a lot of space, so ideally I'd like to upgrade the storage even further before I do anything like that. So what we're going to do with the iPod is just connect this up to my Mac Mini, reset it within Finder, and we'll have a up and running iPod actually formatted for Macintosh. The iPod is reset. We're at the setup screen. And that was it. Yeah, the setup is, well, I mean, you saw it. It was basically just select the language and you're in. No Apple ID, no activation lock. It's just a good old iPod that is ready to go. We can finally reconnect it back to the Mac Pro here, and hopefully we won't have any problems anymore. Welcome to your new iPod. Remember the good old days when we had the iPod Touch, the iPod Nano, and the iPod Shuffle? It's always awesome to see that, especially within iTunes here. So it just defaulted to the Mac Pro name here, but I will change it so it's actually just iPod for now. For the first time, the format is actually Macintosh, not Windows. And now we don't have to worry about this because, well, this isn't going to receive any updates anytime soon. As this is, of course, a monochrome iPod, this is all you get. Simpler times for sure. Earlier, when I was talking about cleaning up all the miscellaneous files from USB flash drives and things that have just been sitting around for forever, iTunes was and still is a part of that because it's essentially a never-ending project. Now, many of the tracks within my iTunes library I've added myself, and then some things I have actually recently removed because I realized I would never listen to it. It's just going to take up space, and the only reason why I have content like this is because they were from iPods. So essentially, the iPods that I have, I transferred everything over to my iTunes library, and well, the result is a huge mess. Now, some of the songs have genuinely been pretty interesting. Others I would literally never listen to. Some of them wouldn't even play in the first place because it wasn't authorized to do so. And if you took a look over at the genres here, you probably noticed that there's 3 different DJ genres. Don't ask me what these are for, because honestly, I should probably use this feature more, but with the tracks that I've added myself, I haven't really set up the genres. I should really change that in the future, but like I said, iTunes is a never-ending project. So just because I have all of these tracks here, it doesn't mean I necessarily listen to all of these artists. I would still rather work on my iTunes library though, because, you know, it's a custom selection of music. You actually know what you have. It's all locally stored. Yes, it can be a headache sometimes, but once you actually have it set up, you don't have to change it in the future. So what we're going to do is we're going to sync over these 2 Calvin Harris albums just to try it out. Now, to be fair, it is only 28 songs, but this is a very fast process. And just like that, iPod sync is now complete. Now this is a certified Steve moment. I've disconnected the Mac Pro from the hi-fi setup to plug it into the iPod, which actually has a headphone jack, and we can actually try out our music. Now how cool is that? Our iPod plays music. We can pause the music, we can play the music, we can skip tracks, and if we want to, we can go back and select something else. I'm so glad that this iPod is back. I mean, to be honest, it never really left. It just sat for a while, but now I finally actually updated it to work with my Macintosh library, not the Windows one that is non-existent anymore, and I can't wait to use this even more. Now don't get me wrong, it's nice to have a modern alternative, whether it be an iPhone, an iPod that uses flash storage, or something similar, but you just can't beat the feeling of a classic iPod like this. Just a good old iPod with a Clickwheel that plays back your music and nothing else. Even though the monochrome screen might be a disadvantage compared to something like an iPod video, this design is just iconic. It works, and it works extremely well. And as I do actually have other docks, I can leave this one permanently connected to use with this specific iPod. With all the modern technology that we have nowadays, at least iTunes and the iPod continue to work just like they did all those years ago. It's actually kind of crazy to think how long this iPod has been sitting, but I'm just glad that it's actually up and running now, it's functional, and I can actually use it again. If you enjoyed today's video, then consider leaving a thumbs up, and if you want to see more awesome projects, then consider subscribing. We've got so many other cool devices that I can't wait to get to, and hopefully they won't be sitting around as long as this iPod did. Anyways, that's going to be it for now. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Let's get it.